Good morning. It is 5:50 a.m. on Wednesday, October 21st, 2015. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. Feeling better today, although still a little sleepy because I got up earlier, hoping to do some writing before work today. But although I've still got a little bit of remnants of being sick, runny nose, etc., definitely an improvement over the last couple of days. One of the things that I had originally planned to talk about yesterday, before getting sidetracked on the whole parking thing, which update, I did not ever find the original parking pass. However, it was only $10 to get the new one, so that's what I did. And it's yet another example that I wish my stupid brain could learn from, that when you actually just do it, it's not a big deal. Anyway, one of the things that I did on the day that I was homesick and not up for anything other than sitting on the couch is I played through to the end of a game called Broken Age, which is an old school puzzle adventure type of game, although made recently, by Tim Schafer. And it was originally a Kickstarter, and there's a whole thing about how the first half was released last year, and then Act 2 came out this year. I had played Act 1 back when it came out, and liked it a lot, but of course it was half a story. And so then Act 2 came out a while ago, but I never kind of got around to it. But the Broken Age was one of the free games for PlayStation Plus this month, and so since I had it on the PlayStation 4, and since it had been so long since I had played Act 1, instead of completing the game from the halfway point on the PC, where I had played the original half, I played through the whole thing on the PS4. And the game is beautiful, and the game is funny, the game is very well made, and aside from a common adventure game problem where some of the puzzles, especially later in the game, are just willfully obtuse. It's a problem with those sorts of games that sometimes the puzzle is something that, like, you could never figure it out. It's always just something like, well, once you see the animation that happens when you click the right item on the right thing, then you see what you're doing. But there's no way you could have guessed that that's what would happen, and you really had to just go to trial and error. And that, I can only imagine that that's an incredibly difficult balance to strike when making a game of that time. How difficult to make the puzzles. In particular, in this case, though, I think now, when time to play is at a premium, my preferred level of difficulty for adventure games is difficult, but with a guide that I can look up the answer when I start to get frustrated. And the problem in this game is that there's one bit where you are required to do something repeatedly where the actual solution is randomized for you, meaning you can't just look up what the solution to the puzzle was, because it won't be the same for you as it was for everybody else, so you can't just get a picture of it. You have to it forces you to have to learn how to solve the puzzle, which sometimes is satisfying, but other times is too difficult. And so that was pretty annoying. And so I got past that. But so I'm so glad that I did, because despite those frustrations, I love the story so much. And it deftly includes all of these real world themes and important issues without really getting ever too heavy handed or serious about it, because There's no, the, there's always a light touch, even when it's approaching things that are, more serious issues. And then there's always the layer of fiction and metaphor in there that makes it not too on the nose. But the basic premise is that you have two different characters, and they're kind of each doing their own story. And you can switch between them at any time, but otherwise the stories seem to be completely separate. And especially through the first half, you start getting little hints that would help you guess maybe how the stories are connected. But what's interesting is that some of the hints start to seem contradictory. And then the actual answer I never would have predicted, and I won't spoil it here. And then as the game progresses into the second half, there's a little bit of a swap, and then eventually the stories start connecting much more directly. And so we have the story of Vela, who lives in a sort of little, like not typical swords and sorcery, Western, Middle Ages type fantasy, but a, fantasy village where like it's a village of bakers named Sugar Bunting. But Vela, we learn immediately, has been selected for a great honor that she seems to not be excited about. Why is that? Well, it turns out that the great honor is to have been selected for the Maiden's Feast, which essentially involves being fed to a giant monster so that it won't destroy the town. And what's really interesting about that whole storyline is that there's a lot of emphasis on got to make you look pretty so you can attract the monster. And just all of these things about how everybody telling her just because it's the way that society has always been done, it's like, well, sure. I mean, nobody wants to get eaten by a giant monster, but I mean, it's a great honor to be able to do this for your town. I mean, you want to save your town, don't you? And just the pressures being put on her to essentially just sacrifice herself. Which on the one hand, because this fantasy universe, I mean, we don't know that it's not literally true. I mean, this is a giant monster presumably coming. I mean, is it going to just literally, like, if you don't give it maidens, it's going to just stomp the town and there's nothing anybody can do? So, and then her desire to fight back leads to additional adventures where she goes off to several other towns that all have this same Maiden's Feast tradition, and trying to figure out what's really going on. Is there any way to fight this thing? And even though that seems like it could be serious, there's a lot of really funny stuff and some great voice acting there. And in the meantime, we have this other side of the story with a boy named Shay who's living on a spaceship where every single thing he does all day is controlled by the computer, who he's told to call mom, and acts and talks like a mom, except that it's a computer face inside a little sun thing. And the idea is that they're trying to make exciting adventures for him, but with a super priority over everything of keeping him totally safe. And the problem is that all of the adventures that the computer's been plying him with all his life, he's lived on this computer, on this ship all his life, is they're all like little kid things. And so he's starting to get really bored with them and looking for something else because he's kind of trapped, so it'll be this mission of oh, we gotta go save the avalanche victims. And then he'll go, and it's basically just a big room on the ship that's been set up to look like a mountain town, and the same little yarn robots that he sees everywhere have been trapped in an ice cream avalanche. And the only way we can be saved is if some brave hero would eat us out. Eat us out. Oh, God. Eat the ice cream away so we can get escape. And so it's like, oh, it's this silly little kid adventure, except that like stuff like that is all he has to do all day. And anytime he wants to try to mix it up and make it more exciting, he's shut down by the computer because it's not safe. And so he has to try to see if there's anything more to life. Is there anything else he can do? And in any case, this story is great. Wow, 10 minutes. Yikes. Okay, so in any case, some review of Broken Age. It's great. I absolutely loved it. Must play if you're into those types of adventure games, but with the minor caveat that especially in the second half, there's a few puzzles that are... Just look them up when you get frustrated. And yeah, so I loved it. Highly recommended. All right, I will talk to you guys tomorrow for 5 more minutes. Or 10 if I get excited about something, I guess.